Chapter 1. The Whisper of Forgotten Kingdoms. Hey there, night traveler. Before you close your eyes, let's take a little trip. Not to somewhere noisy or bright, but to the quiet corners of time, places the world forgot. You won't need a passport or a time machine that goes ding when you press the wrong button. Just your imagination and maybe a comfy pillow. The world you and I live in, full of cars, cities, and glowing screens, is only a blink in the story of time. Before us, there were others, empires that rose from dust, built dreams from stone, sang their songs under the same moon, and then, just like that, disappeared. Most history books talk about the big names: Egypt, Rome, Greece, China. Those were the loud ones. They left pyramids, marble statues, and a lot of ego carved in stone. But somewhere between their noise, there were smaller worlds, quieter, softer ones, that lived, loved, and faded without a fuss. Imagine walking through an ancient valley by moonlight. The air smells of dust and salt. Ruins whisper as the breeze slips through cracked walls. No tour guides, no cameras, only you and the ghosts of forgotten people. Who once thought their world would last forever? Funny thing, right? We all think our time is permanent. But the truth is, the earth just keeps spinning while our stories slowly melt into the soil. Still, some stories refuse to stay buried. If you listen closely enough, they whisper. Tonight, I want you to listen with me, to slow down, the way time does in the deep night, and drift through those lost empires. 3 of them, to be exact. They weren't big, they weren't loud, but oh, they were beautiful. We'll visit the Lycians, mountain people who carved tombs into cliffs that still watch the sea. Then we'll travel across golden sands to meet the Sogdians, the dreamers of the Silk Road, who traded silk, stories, and probably a lot of gossip. And finally, we'll sail toward green jungles and forgotten temples, into the kingdom of Kampa, where the air smelled like incense and ocean salt. These were the hidden chapters of humanity, tucked between the grand empires and the dusty pages of history books. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can an entire empire just vanish? Well, that's the magic of time. It doesn't erase, it just folds. Like when you forget a dream by morning. But some piece of it lingers all day. A smell, a sound, a feeling you can't explain. That's what these empires are, the half-remembered dreams of humanity. Each one had its kings and queens, its laughter and its worries, its children running through dusty streets. They had festivals, food, and probably at least one guy complaining about taxes. Because let's face it, some things never change. But tonight isn't about sadness. It's about wonder. The kind of wonder that makes you feel both tiny and infinite. Like looking up at the stars and realizing you're part of the same story that once guided ancient travelers. Think about it. Somewhere, thousands of years ago, a Lycian fisherman watched the same moon you see now. A Sogdian merchant traced his route by those same constellations. A Kampa temple dancer lit her oil lamp and prayed beneath the same night sky that hangs over you. Time connects us, quiet thread by quiet thread. So, as you settle in, take a deep breath. Let the world slow down. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight of the day drift away. We're not rushing through history tonight. We're floating through it. We'll wander down forgotten roads, peek inside temples swallowed by vines, and listen to echoes in the stone. No tests, no dates to memorize. Just stories, simple, human, and soft as a bedtime sigh. Because history isn't always about war and crowns. Sometimes, it's about the little things. The way a mother hummed her child, or how a craftsman placed a final stone in a wall, never knowing it would still stand 1,000 years later. It's about ordinary lives that made extraordinary ripples, even if the world forgot their names. And maybe that's what makes them special. They didn't scream their stories. They whispered them, to the trees, to the wind, to time itself. And somehow, that whisper found its way here to you tonight. So, close your eyes if you like. Let the sound of the waves and wind blur together. Feel the centuries roll back, one by one. We're about to step into the first of our lost realms. A place where mountains touch the sea, where cliffs are carved with tombs, and where forgotten people once watched the sun fall into turquoise waters. This is where our story begins. Welcome to Lycia. Chapter 2. Beneath the turquoise sky, the world of the Lycians. Welcome to Lycia, a land tucked between mountains and sea, a place where the cliffs glow gold at sunset and the water looks like melted turquoise. Today, this slice of paradise sits in southern Turkey, where tourists go for beach selfies and sunburns. But long before that, around the 15th century before Christ, it was home to a people called the Lycians. Now, the Lycians were, well, kind of mysterious. They didn't shout about their greatness like the Egyptians or the Romans. They were quiet mountain folks, strong, proud, and a little stubborn, the kind who'd rather carve their names into cliffs and brag at banquets. Picture it. Steep valleys wrapped in green, cliffs rising straight out of the sea, and villages built between rivers and olive trees. It's not hard to see why they stayed here. If you had turquoise water, golden sunlight, and honey that tasted like heaven, you'd probably never leave either. Lycia wasn't one big empire with a bossy king sitting on a shiny throne. Nope. They were more like a bunch of cousins who lived close enough to argue but still shared dinner. Their cities, like Xanthos, Patera, and Myra, were independent but worked together. They even had something like an ancient democracy, way before it was trendy. Each city sent its own representatives to a big meeting, kind of like a council of uncles try to decide who brings dessert to the family picnic. Everyone got a vote, and that was rare back then. Imagine, thousands of years ago, in a world full of emperors and pharaohs, a group of seaside mountain people saying, "Hey, maybe everyone should have a say." That's pretty cool, right? Let's visit Xanthos, their biggest city, a place that saw more sunsets than most civilizations see lifetimes. Xanthos sat beside a river, surrounded by hills. The streets were lined with houses made of stone, and markets buzzed with traders selling olive oil, pottery, and bronze jewelry. You could probably smell bread baking somewhere, and hear goats argue with each other nearby. Then there was Patera, their port city. Oh, Patera. Imagine a harbor full of ships with painted sails, fishermen unloading their catch, and merchants shouting prices over the crash of waves. It was also the birthplace of St. Nicholas. Yes, the man who later became Santa Claus. So technically, you could say Santa came from a sunny beach town. Makes you wonder why he moved to the North Pole. But what truly makes the Lycians unforgettable are their tombs. Not gloomy underground ones. No. They built their tombs high on cliffs, carved right into the rock, facing the sea. Rows and rows of them, like stone windows looking out over eternity. Imagine standing there at sunset, the cliffs glowing orange, the sea shimmering below, and these ancient tombs watching the horizon, as if waiting for someone who never came back. The sun dipped gold over the cliffs, you might say, as the Lycians carved their homes into eternity. They believed that when someone died, their soul would be carried away by winged creatures, maybe eagles, maybe spirits, and that's why the tomb stood high above, close to the sky. Beautiful, isn't it? A civilization that faced death not with fear, but with quiet art and open air. The Lycians also loved the sea. They were sailors, traders, and explorers. Their ships darted across the Mediterranean, carrying wine, honey, and legends. Sometimes they fought, sometimes they traded, sometimes both in the same week. Typical humans. They didn't leave behind massive temples or libraries full of scrolls. What they left was carved in stone, walls that spoke through their silence. Even now, if you walk to the ruins of Xanthos or climb the hills above Patera, you can still feel it, that hum of something ancient. It's like the land remembers, even if we don't. The Lycians also had their own language, a script nobody else used. For centuries, nobody could read it. It looked like someone spilled alphabet soup on a rock. But modern historians eventually cracked the code, piece by piece, and realized it was part Indo-European, part mystery. Because of course the Lycians couldn't just make it simple. Over time, bigger empires rolled through, Persians, Greeks, Romans, each leaving their mark. But somehow, the Lycian spirit stuck around. Even when foreign rulers took over, the people kept their traditions. They kept meeting in councils, kept carving tombs, kept being, well, stubbornly Lycian. And maybe that's why we still talk about them now. Not because they conquered the world, but because they knew who they were and didn't let anyone tell them otherwise. They lived between mountains and sea, between independence and cooperation, between life and eternity. When you think about it, maybe that's the secret of their peace. They didn't build to dominate. They built to belong, to the cliffs, to the sun, to the endless sea that still whispers their name. So if you ever find yourself in southern Turkey and you hike up a rocky path near sunset, look up at those old Lycian tombs. They're still there, silent, patient, watching. And if the wind brushes your ear just right, maybe you'll hear it, a whisper from another time, saying, "We were here. We lived beneath the turquoise sky." Chapter 3, Gods, Heroes, and Honey Wine, Lycian Daily Life. Morning in ancient Lycia. The sky is pink and gold. The air smells like salt and olive trees, and somewhere down the valley, a rooster is deeply committed to ruining everyone's sleep. Life here wasn't flashy. No giant pyramids or marble palaces. Just steady, sunny living between the sea and the mountains. The Lycians were the kind of people who greet the dawn with a yawn, stretch, and get to work. Families woke early. Men went off the fields, tending wheat, barley, and olives. Women handled the homes, cooked, weaved, raised the kids, and probably managed 80% of everything. As usual, the kids, running barefoot between goats and fig trees, chasing each other through the dust. Simple days, soft routines. But don't get the wrong idea. They weren't isolated hill people. Lycians were busy traders too. Their ports brought in ships from Greece, Egypt, and Phoenicia. They sold olive oil, wine, honey, and fancy fabrics. And in return, they got ideas. Myths, art, languages, and recipes all floated in with the tide. You could walk through the market in Patera and hear 4 different languages before breakfast. Greek sailors arguing about prices. Persian merchants trying to sound polite but clearly annoyed. Local Lycian women haggling like pros. And somewhere in the back, someone definitely overcharging for fish. The Lycians soaked up this cultural mix but kept their own twist. They borrowed bits of Greek style, sure, gods, pottery, stories, but made it their own. If Greece was the drama queen of the ancient world, Lycia was a quiet Poe in the corner, smiling and writing something better. Religion was everywhere. Temples stood on hilltops, their marble floors cool under bare feet. People came with offerings of flowers, bread, or honey wine, a sweet drink they made from fermented honey, and love for good flavor. It wasn't just a drink, though. It was a way to say, "Hey, gods, thanks for not sending another storm this week." They worshipped local deities mixed with Greek ones, like Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. In fact, Lycia had a whole legend about her. According to myth, Leto fled to Lycia to give birth to her twins. When thirsty, she asked the locals for water, and they refused. So she turned them into frogs. A bit harsh, maybe, but ancient gods didn't really do second chances. You could almost imagine it. The temple courtyard glowing with torchlight, priests chanting softly, smoke rising like silk into the night air. Outside, cicadas sing in the trees, and the waves hum their endless lullaby against the shore. It wasn't grand, but it was peaceful, The kind of peace that gets under your skin and stays there. They love stories, too. Every Lishan child grew up hearing tales of heroes, monsters, and journeys across the sea, maybe around small fires at night, while the stars crowded above. Old fishermen told stories of sea gods. Farmers told tales of mountain spirits who guarded their fields. Even their tombs were covered in carvings, half myth, half memory, so that even in death, the stories didn't stop. And their music, oh, the music, soft flutes, gentle drums, and voices rising with the breeze. You'd hear it floating through olive groves, across stone streets, mixing with laughter and clinking cups of honey wine. History never recorded their songs, but if you listen carefully, you can almost feel them in the air. Despite all their neighbors and influences, the Lishans stayed fiercely independent. They never liked being told what to do. Even when bigger empires rolled in, Persians, Athenians, whoever was trying to play boss that decade, Lisha kept its council, its customs, and its calm defiance. It's like they looked at every new ruler and said, "Sure, you can conquer us, but you'll never tell us how to make our honey wine." And that independence wasn't just political. It was personal. You can see it in the way they built their tombs. No two exactly alike. In their language, strange and unique, carved deep into stone. In their art, full of human warmth instead of divine perfection. The Lishans were proud to be themselves, even as the world around them kept changing. But time, as always, has its own plans. Their language slowly faded. Greek took over, then Latin, then silence. No one meant for it to happen. It just did, like waves wearing down cliffs, soft and patient. One word forgotten here, another there, until the last speaker fell quiet. The stones still remember, though they keep the rhythm of that lost tongue in their carvings. It's strange, isn't it? A whole people, once so alive, families laughing, ships sailing, fires crackling at night. Now just whispers in the rocks. But maybe that's how life always works. We build, we dream, we fade, and then someone someday remembers. So if you ever taste honey wine or hear the hum of wind between cliffs, think of them, the Lishans, who live simply and beautifully beneath the turquoise sky. Their gods are quiet now, their songs almost gone. But the spirit that built tombs to touch the heavens still lingers, gentle as a sea breeze at dusk. Chapter 4, The Vanishing of Lisha. Every story has an ending. Some are loud, filled with battles and kings shouting orders. Others fade away, like the sound of waves after the tide goes out. Lisha's ending was a little bit of both. For hundreds of years, the Lishans lived quietly between their mountains and the sea, farming, trading, telling stories under starry skies. But the world outside their valleys was changing fast. Big empires were moving like storms. The Persians from the east, the Greeks from across the sea, and later, the Romans, marching wherever they pleased. Lisha was small, peaceful, and beautiful. Basically the kind of place bigger powers loved to visit and never leave. First came the Persians around 546 BCE. The Lishans didn't exactly roll out a welcome mat. In fact, they fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered, and soon the Persian army reached Xanthos, Lisha's largest city. That's when something unforgettable happened. Something both tragic and strangely noble. When the people of Xanthos realized they couldn't win, they made a heartbreaking choice. They gathered their families, their treasures, and their sacred items, and set the entire city on fire. They destroyed everything, even themselves, rather than surrender. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But ancient historians, including Herodotus, the gossip columnist of his time, wrote about it. He said the men fought until the very last one fell, while the women and children perished in flames. A whole city choosing death over slavery. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's heavy. And yeah, it is. But it also shows how deeply the Lishans valued freedom. To them, losing their independence was worse than losing their lives. It's dark, but it's powerful. After that fire, Lisha wasn't the same. Some survivors rebuilt, of course. People always do. Life crept back through the ashes. The Persians stayed for a while. But even they couldn't erase the spirit of this stubborn land. The Lishans kept their language, their customs, their tombs, still carving stories into the cliffs as if nothing had happened. It's almost like they said, "Fine, conquer us, but we're keeping our art." Then came the Greeks, the age of sandals, statues, and too much olive oil. Alexander the Great swept through around 333 BC. By then, Lisha was already tired of fighting. So instead of fire, they offered peace. Alexander took one look at their temples and tombs and said, "Yeah, this place is staying." And honestly, under the Greeks, Lisha had a bit of a glow-up. Greek culture blended with Lishan life. Architecture, language, even myths. The old gods got Greek names, and the Lishan alphabet slowly shifted into Greek letters. It wasn't forced, more like two songs blending into one melody. But when the Romans arrived, well, things got bigger, louder, and a little more organized. Rome loved a good coastline, and Lisha's turquoise shores were too good to resist. They built theaters, baths, and roads. Classic Roman behavior. The Lishans became part of the Roman Empire, not by war this time, but by paperwork, which honestly might be worse. Still, life under Rome wasn't so bad. The cities thrived again. Patera became a key harbor, and Myra grew famous for trade and temples. Even St. Nicholas, the future Santa Claus, worked here as a bishop centuries later. Imagine that, the man who becomes Santa walking through ancient Lishan streets, probably sweating under all that armor of holiness. But nothing lasts forever. Time kept moving. Languages kept changing. By the 5th century CE, the old Lishan tongue had gone quiet. Nobody wrote it, nobody spoke it. It just faded like a song people stopped singing, until even the echo was gone. Earthquakes hit, trade routes shifted, and slowly the cities emptied. The sea kept shining, the cliffs kept standing, but the voices that once filled them were gone. Today, if you visit what's left, the ruins of Xanthos, the tombs of Myra, you can still hear the silence. The kind of silence that hums with memory. Footsteps on broken marble. The wind brushing against stone that remembers too much. Sometimes when the sun sets, the cliffs of Lisha glow like fire again. Not from tragedy this time, but from the golden light that slips between the stones. It's almost as if the land itself is remembering that night. The flames of Xanthos, the courage of a people who refuse to kneel. And when night finally falls, everything turns silver and still. The sea sighs, the wind drifts, and the tombs carved into the cliffs watch over the waves. Patient, eternal, waiting. Lisha may have vanished from maps and tongues, but not from the earth, and not from the whispers carried on the wind. And so, beneath the dust, Lisha sleeps, her language gone, her tombs whispering to the sea. Chapter 5, Across the Silk Wind, and of the Sogdians. If Lisha was all sea breeze and golden cliffs, our next stop is a complete opposite: sand, wind, and the endless stretch of the Silk Road. So grab your imaginary blanket, maybe a cup of tea, and let's drift east into the soft glow of starlit deserts where a new world waits. Here, Under skies so wide they make you feel like an ant with ambitions, once lived a people called the Sogdians. Not exactly a household name, right? You won't find them in your high school history book, sandwiched between Rome and China. But make no mistake, they were the lifeline of the ancient world. Without the Sogdians, your silk pillowcase, your cinnamon, and even your bedtime tea might never have made it across the world. Picture this: a caravan winding through the dunes, dozens of camels, each loaded with bright silk, silver, and spices that smell like heaven and sneeze combined. At the front walks a Sogdian merchant, sunburnt, calm, and calculating how many jars of honey wine he'll buy when he gets back home. Behind him, his friends sing softly, stories drifting into the cold night air. Their world was built around trade and stories, because the Sogdians weren't just merchants, they were connectors. They linked China to Persia, India to Byzantium. Think of them as the ancient world's Wi-Fi, carrying messages, ideas, and gossip faster than anyone else. And like Wi-Fi, they sometimes dropped the signal in the middle of the desert. But hey, no system's perfect. The heart of their world was Samarkand, a name that sounds like magic even before you know what it means. The air there shimmered with spice, smoke, and laughter. The bazaars were alive with sound, silk rustling, coins clinking, musicians playing flutes made of bone and bamboo. If you stood there at noon, you could hear 10 languages at once. Chinese traders haggled for Persian glass. Indian monks shared tea with Greek travelers. And somewhere, a Sogdian storyteller was selling a tale to anyone willing to listen. They were masters of hospitality and bargaining. If you ever bought a rug in a market and felt like you won, chances are a Sogdian ancestor somewhere is still laughing softly. But there was more to the Sogdians than trade. They were cultural magpies, picking shiny ideas from everywhere. They followed many religions: Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Manichaeism, and even early Christianity. To them, every belief was a story worth hearing. It made them surprisingly open-minded for a people surrounded by deserts and danger. At night, in their desert camps, they'd sit around fire pits, sipping something warm and sweet, maybe fermented mare's milk, maybe wine, and tell tales of distant lands. Stories of dragons from China, God from India, and heroes who could cross the mountains in one breath. The stars overhead were their ceiling, and the sand beneath was their map. Their camels, by the way, were the real heroes of this tale. Big, stubborn, smelly, but unstoppable. Each one could carry hundreds of pounds of treasure and still glare at you like you owed them rent. Without those grumpy ships of the desert, the Silk Road might have been just a lonely idea. The Sogdians made the impossible possible, moving silk from China, gold from Persia, glass from Rome, and sometimes just plain gossip. A rumor about a new emperor or a rare gemstone could travel faster than a sandstorm, thanks to their networks. They even carried music and language, literally. Many ancient scripts and songs found in China trace back to Sogdian roots. Their words became travelers too. But perhaps what made the Sogdians so fascinating was their attitude. They didn't conquer or build massive empires. They didn't carve giant tombs or declare themselves gods. They simply moved gracefully, endlessly, through shifting dunes and changing times. They trusted in trade, in friendship, and in the quiet power of being everywhere without owning anything. There's something poetic about that, don't you think? While kings built walls and armies, the Sogdians built connections. They proved that influence doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums softly between sand dunes, carried by the wind. And as you imagine that caravan disappearing into horizon, torches flickering, camels swaying, the air thick with the smell of spice, You can almost hear the whisper of the Silk Road. It's saying, "We were here. We linked the world." The Sogdians didn't leave behind pyramids or empires, but they left something just as powerful, the invisible thread that tied East and West together. And even though their name faded from maps, their influence never really left. Today, the wind still blows across Samarkand and Bokhara, stirring up bits of sand that once touched every corner of the known world. And maybe, if you listen close enough, you can still hear the soft jingle of caravan bells fading into the twilight. So rest easy, traveler. Let the silk wind carry you through the dunes of time, because somewhere out there, under the same stars, the Sogdians are still on the move. Chapter 6, The Sogdian Spirit. Life along the caravan route. If you stand in the old city of Samarkand at dusk, at least what's left of it, you can almost feel the rhythm of ancient life still humming beneath your feet. The soft thud of camel hooves, the laughter of traders counting coins that probably jingled more than they were worth, the smell of roasted nuts, spice, and maybe a little too much camel. This was a Sogdian world, where life and trade danced together in a way few cultures have ever matched. To them, business wasn't just business. It was an art, a song, and sometimes a full family affair. The Sogdians were natural-born traders. If there was a deal to be made, they'd make it and charm you while doing it. Their caravans moved across deserts, through mountains, and into cities so far apart it's hard to believe they even had maps. And yet, somehow, they always found their way back, probably guided by instinct, stars, and gossip. Back home, in cities like Samarkand, Bokhara, and Panjaiket, life pulsed with color and sound. Narrow streets wound between mud brick houses painted in soft earth tones. Market stalls spilled over with bright cloth, glittering glass, and piles of apricots so sweet they made travelers forget their troubles, at least until they got the bill. Family life was simple, warm, and full of chatter. Men traded and traveled. Women managed the home, ran small businesses, and sometimes even joined the trade themselves. Children darted between the legs of camels, chasing each other through the city gates, pretending to be mighty caravan leaders. If you've ever seen kids play shop with pebbles and sticks, same energy, just with more sand. At night, when the caravans rolled in, the whole city came alive. Bells jingled, torches flickered, and tired traders swapped stories instead of prices. The air was thick with music. Flutes, hand drums, maybe a singer or two telling tales of faraway lands. Imagine it. The stars above, the glow of oil lamps below, and everyone leaning in to listen as the desert cooled around them. And no, the stories they told. Tales of dragons that guarded mountain passes, of spirits who rode on the wind, of travelers who got lost in sandstorms only to find hidden cities shimmering in mirages. These weren't bedtime stories just for children. They were for everyone. Because when your whole life is a journey through deserts and danger, stories become your compass. Religion was woven into everything they did. The Sogdians started out following Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest faiths in the world. They believe in a great balance, light versus darkness, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Their temples were simple but powerful. Fire altars flickering beneath open skies. You can picture it. Priests in white robes tending to a flame that never went out, the smoke twisting upward like a prayer written in air. Later, as they traveled and met new people, they added new colors to their spiritual palette. Some embraced Buddhism, drawn by its calm and compassion. Others followed Manichaeism, which mixed bits of many beliefs into one big cosmic smoothie. The Sogdians weren't afraid of mixing and matching faiths. To them, truth was like trade. It flowed best when shared. Their art reflected that same spirit of openness. Wall paintings from ancient Sogdian homes show lively banquets, dancers twirling in bright robes and mythical beasts swirling through clouds. No stiff royal poses here. Everyone looks alive, mid-laugh, mid-song, mid-bite. You can almost hear the music and smell the spice on those painted walls. And, of course, there was food, because what's a civilization without snacks? Flatbreads baked in clay ovens, dates dipped in honey, roasted lamb seasoned with cumin and coriander, the kind of smell that could make even the most tired traveler forget their sore feet. Hospitality wasn't just polite, it was sacred. If a stranger arrived at your door, you fed them first and asked questions later. Unless they smell like camel, then you maybe ask first. But beyond the trade and the taste, what made the Sogdians special was their curiosity. They wanted to know the world and the people in it. They were like ancient diplomats, moving not through armies but through friendship, through conversation, through kindness. When night came and the winds quieted, families gathered around flickering lamps. Oil flames painted the walls gold. The sound of the desert softened to a hush, and someone, maybe a father back from a long journey or a grandmother with 100 stories, would begin to speak. In the soft glow of oil lamps, they'd say, "There once lived a dragon who guarded a mountain of stars." And everyone would lean closer, eyes wide, hearts open, because in a world where tomorrow might bring a sandstorm or a new adventure, those stories were warmth, hope, and memory all in one. The Sogdians may be gone now, their cities just whispers beneath the sand. But the spirit that drove them, curiosity, trade, and storytelling, still flows through us. Every time we share an idea, a laugh, or a tale across a distance, we're doing what they did. We're keeping the silk wind alive. So close your eyes for a moment. Listen to that wind. It might just be carrying an old Sogdian song, a song of home, of stars, and of stories that never end. Chapter 7. The Fading Tracks of Sogdia. Every golden age eventually runs out of sunlight. For the Sogdians, it didn't happen all at once. It came quietly, like dust slipping over a desert, the light fading before you realize it's gone. For centuries, they ruled the roads without an army. They didn't conquer lands, they connected them. Their wealth wasn't castles or crowns, it was trust, trade, and reputation. But even the best traders can't bargain with time. At first, the signs were small. The world they knew began to shift. The Chinese Tang dynasty, once their biggest trading partner, started to tighten borders. Wars flared up along the Silk Road. Bandits, rival empires, and a few overly ambitious warlords decided that raiding caravans was easier than joining them. It's the classic, why build when you can just steal? Problem. The Arab caliphates rose in the West, bringing new faith, new laws, and new trade networks. The Sogdians, as usual, tried to adapt. They were like desert chameleons, blending in wherever they went. But the roads were changing, and the world's traffic began to flow around them instead of through them. Then came the big one, the Mongols. You probably heard of them. They rode in fast, hit hard, and didn't exactly send friendly visit letters beforehand. When Genghis Khan and his armies thundered across Central Asia in the 13th century, the old cities, Samarkand, Bokhara, Khiva, all felt the earth shake. Some surrendered, some resisted. Either way, the Silk Road ran red for a while. The Sogdians, caught between empires, were swept up in the storm. Caravans stopped moving. Markets closed. The hum of trade, the heartbeat of their world, went still. Samarkand, once the jewel of the desert, fell silent. Its streets, once filled with merchants and music, turned to dust. The bright bazaars became ghostly echoes. You can almost imagine the last merchant standing there, staring at his unsold silk and thinking, well, this is awkward. But even then, even as their power faded, the Sogdians didn't vanish overnight. Their language lingered in far-off places, on scraps of paper, in carved stones, and in the speech of travelers. Their descendants blended into the new empires that rose over their old lands: Persian, Arab, Mongol, Timurid. Each layer of history covered them a little more, like sand settling after a storm. The Silk Road itself began to fade too. Sea trade was the new thing. Why risk 1,000 miles of desert and bandits when you could just sail your goods and enjoy snacks along the way? The old caravan paths fell quiet. The inns and watchtowers were swallowed by dunes. The songs once sung by travelers became bedtime stories whispered to children who never saw a camel caravan in their life. By the 14th century, the name Sogdia was already becoming a memory, a ghost on old maps. But memories have their own strange way of surviving. The DNA of Sogdia lived on in the people who stayed, in the bright fabrics of Uzbek culture, in the rich patterns of Tajik songs, in the way Central Asia still feels like a meeting point of worlds. And maybe that's the real legacy of the Sogdians. They didn't build empires of stone or armies of men. They built something softer, harder to destroy: connection, the kind that keeps echoing even when the voices that made it are gone. Today, archaeologists still uncover pieces of their world: murals, coins, tiny letters written in fading Sogdian script. Each one is like a whisper from the past saying, "We were here. We mattered." If you walk through the ruins of ancient Samarkand or Bokhara, the air still holds their presence. The walls might not speak, but the silence does. It hums softly, like an old song you almost remember. It's strange, isn't it? How something as vast as a civilization can just slip away, not with a bang, but with a whisper. No fireworks, no final speech, just time doing what time does best, moving on. But if you close your eyes, you can still picture them. The merchant adjusting his turban as dawn breaks over the desert. The young boy chasing camels through the city gate, laughing. The family gathered around a lamp, sharing stories about dragons, stars, and home. Those moments, small, ordinary, human, are what really survive. Not the coins, not the maps, not even the empires. Just the feeling of being alive in a world always changing. And so, as the night deepens and the dunes drift over old roads, Sogdia rests beneath the sand, quiet, but not forgotten, because every breeze that crosses Central Asia still carries a trace of their spirit. It rustles through ruins, dances across old caravan tracks, and whispers a line that only the wind remembers. Chapter 8, A Green Kingdom Between Mountains and Sea. The Kampa Civilization. The desert winds fade now, and in their place comes the smell of salt and rain. We've left the Silk Road behind, the dunes, the dust, the endless tan. Now, the world turns green again. Palm trees sway. Lotus ponds shimmer beneath the sun, and incense curls toward unseen gods. Welcome to Kampa, a kingdom born between the mountains and the sea, in what is today's central Vietnam. For more than 1,000 years, from the 2nd to the 15th century, the Kampa civilization ruled this lush coast. And let me tell you, they knew how to live in style. Their world was soaked in color. Bright temples rose from jungles, carved with stories of gods, heroes, and occasionally very dramatic monkeys. The air always carried the scent of frangipani and sandalwood. Their rivers glimmered like glass, winding through rice fields and sleepy fishing towns. If the Sogdians were the masters of the desert, the Kams were the captains of the sea. They built sleek wooden ships that sliced through the waves like silver arrows. Trade was their lifeblood. Spices, ivory, silk, and porcelain flowed in and out of their harbors like a never-ending tide. Sailors from India, Arabia, and China all dropped anchor here, usually to do business, but probably also to nap and eat. And oh, the food. Imagine coconut rice steaming beside bowls of herbs, grilled fish, and chili paste so strong they could make even a god sneeze. They loved flavor, music, and beauty. Everything about Kampa felt alive, like the land itself was humming a tune. Religion in Kampa was just as rich. They followed Hinduism, brought over from India by sea traders and monks. The people built stunning temples to Shiva, Vishnu, and Devi, each one rising like a red brick mountain against the jungle sky. At dawn, priests lit oil lamps, and the air filled with a soft chant of prayers, a sound that drifted through forests and fields like mist. If you listened closely, you could hear it mix with the waves, a conversation between the sea and the gods. Their temples weren't just places of worship. They were works of art. The most famous still stand today at my son's sanctuary, half hidden by trees, half swallowed by time. Here, ancient towers lean gently, roots wrapping around their stones as if the forest decided to give them a hug. It's haunting, beautiful, and just a little spooky at night. Perfect for bedtime, right? Life in Kampa moved with the rhythm of nature. Days began with the call of birds and ended with music drifting over rice fields. The people were skilled in farming, weaving, and wood carving. Markets buzzed with laughter. Fishermen arguing over prices. Children chasing chickens. Traders showing off fabrics that shimmered like fish scales. Family life was close-knit. Homes were built on stilts, high enough to let the tropical floods pass beneath. Inside, the walls smelled faintly of wood smoke and betel nut, sweet and sharp like memory itself. Grandmothers told stories of heroes riding clouds, while grandfathers nodded like they'd met them personally. And when night fell, the whole kingdom seemed to slow down. Lanterns glowed by the water. Frogs croaked like a living orchestra, and the moonlight turned the temple silver. You can picture it. Quiet, peaceful, timeless. The kind of place that makes you forget the world outside even existed. But Kampa wasn't just beauty and calm. They were fierce when needed. Their navy was one of the strongest in Southeast Asia. If pirates or rival kingdoms tried to mess with their trade routes, the Kams would roll up with warships fast enough to make you rethink your life choices. They fought bravely against bigger empires, the Khmer from Cambodia, the Vietnamese from the north, and for centuries they held their ground. You could say Kampa was small but spicy. Their culture blended many worlds, Indian, Indonesian, Chinese, and their own. They wrote in Sanskrit and Cham script, built music out of bronze gongs and bamboo flutes, and danced in slow, graceful circles, each movement a prayer. Even their art was rhythmic. Statues of gods with calm faces and flowing robes, frozen mid-dance, as if waiting for music to start again. Everywhere you look in their story, there's motion, wind, water, rhythm. The Kams believed the world itself was alive, that spirits lingered in rivers, mountains, and the soft hum of the sea. Maybe that's why their civilization lasted so long. They didn't fight nature, they moved with it. So if you close your eyes now, imagine yourself standing on a warm shore at dusk. The horizon glows pink and gold. Somewhere in the jungle, temple bells ring softly. A fisherman hums a tune as his net drips silver water. And far away, the waves roll on, the same waves that once carried compass ships across the world. Time has taken their kingdom. Yes, but the scent of incense, the shape of their towers, the rhythm of their sea, all of it still lingers, like a half-forgotten dream that refuses to fade. So breathe in the salt air, listen to the waves. And remember, there was once a green kingdom between the mountains and the sea, where people prayed to the sun, sailed by the stars, and danced beneath the palms. Chapter 9, Dancers of the Temple Flame, the heart of Kampa. Close your eyes and picture this. The jungle is alive with whispers, not just a wind through palm leaves, but of footsteps, of music, of stories carved into stone and sung into the night. Welcome to Heart of Kampa, where devotion, art, and life dance together like a gentle tide. At the center of this kingdom stood my son's sanctuary, a cluster of red brick towers rising for the earth like frozen flames. They were dedicated to Shiva, the god of creation and destruction, but also the god who looked strikingly calm even when everything else was on fire. The towers were decorated with intricate carvings, gods mid-dance, demons mid-leap, and mythic animals that looked suspiciously like they might blink if you stared long enough. Every brick seemed alive, telling a story for anyone patient enough to read it. And speaking of dance, the Cams love movement. Temples weren't just for prayers. They were stages. During festivals, dancers moved with the rhythm of drums, their limbs curving and swaying like rivers flowing around stones. Golden bracelets jingled. Silk skirts whispered. Every gesture was a prayer, a story, a conversation with the divine. It wasn't just performance. It was devotion. The dancers seemed to melt into the flame of temple lamps, becoming part of the fire, part of the incense smoke, part of the jungle night itself. If you close your eyes, you could almost see the flames reflecting in the dancers' eyes and hear the gods nodding along. Trade fueled this art. Compass ports were busy long before dawn. Ships brought silk, spices, and porcelain from China, ivory and beads from India, and gold, always gold. The wealth wasn't hoarded. It flowed into temples, homes, and festivals, giving dancers something to spin in and architects something to build. Even the carvings on the towers reflected. Tiny elephants with jeweled tusks, gods holding lotus blossoms, all sparkling in the sunlight. Family life and devotion intertwined seamlessly. Children played in the temple courtyards, chasing fireflies while elders chanted hymns. Musicians tuned bronze gongs and bamboo flutes. Some nights, the jungle canopy became a stage for the stars themselves, twinkling as if in time with the drum beats below. Festivals were the heartbeat of Kampa. Imagine this. The air thick with incense, drums rolling deep and steady, voices chanting, and dancers gliding across stone like shadows turned golden. People sang, clapped, and prayed. Not separately, but together, a single tide of devotion and celebration. It was hypnotic, meditative, a lullaby for a civilization fully awake. The Cams weren't just artists or worshippers. They were storytellers. Every carving, every dance step, every chant was a story. Some told of Shiva's triumphs, others of legendary kings and queens. Some were just playful, monkeys stealing fruit from gods, mischievous spirits hiding behind lotus petals. If you listened carefully, you could hear the humor tucked between the holiness. Even at night, the temples never really slept. Lanterns glowed faintly, fireflies blinked in rhythm with the gongs, and the scent of lotus and incense drifted through the jungle. From the tallest tower, you could see the kingdom spread out below, lush forests, winding rivers, and distant waves lapping at the coast. It was a world in balance, moving in harmony with itself. The Cams believed that art and devotion were inseparable. To build a temple was to pray with stone. To dance was to speak with your body. To carve a god's face into brick was to give form to your faith. And every festival was a reminder that life itself is a sacred performance. Soft, meditative pause, wind rustling, distant drum fading. So as you imagine this world, picture yourself among them. You're sitting on a stone courtyard, watching dancers move like liquid fire. The drums hum deep in your chest. The incense curls around your head like a warm, fragrant blanket. Stars peek through the jungle canopy, blinking slowly, patiently. You feel calm. You feel connected. You feel the heartbeat of a civilization that understood something we sometimes forget, that beauty, devotion, and joy are stronger than empires, louder than swords, and longer lasting than gold. And when you finally close your eyes, the temples, the dancers, and the fire all linger in your mind. A gentle rhythm, a golden light, a story waiting to be retold. Chapter 10, The Quiet End of Kampa. Every story has an ending, and every empire meets its quiet moment. For Kampa, it wasn't a sudden crash or a blaze of glory. It was more like the gentle folding of a map. The corners curl, the colors fade, but the shape remains. Over centuries, Kampa faced challenges from all directions. From the west, the Khmer Empire pushed into its lands, claiming cities and reshaping borders. To the north, the Vietnamese kingdom grew stronger, gradually absorbing coastal towns, ports, and villages. Trade shifted, rivers changed, and slowly, the once bright temples of Kampa saw fewer feet crossing their courtyards. The My Sun sanctuary, which had once been the center of devotion and dance, began to sleep. The bricks were still warm from the sun, the carvings still intricate, but fewer people came to worship or celebrate. The jungle, ever patient, crept closer. Vines curled around towers. Roots pushed between bricks. Lotus ponds reclaimed by weeds shimmered faintly beneath the sky. But here's the quiet magic. Kampa didn't vanish. Its people, their traditions, their songs and dances were woven into the cultures around them. Language morphed, art evolved, and rituals transformed. The gods weren't forgotten. They simply traveled, carried in stories whispered to children, or in carvings and bronzes that made their way to new temples. It's easy to think that when an empire falls, it's gone forever. But cultures are more like rivers than walls. Even when one path dries up, water finds a new way. The spirit of Kampa flowed onward in food, music, architecture, and memory. Somewhere in the rhythm of a drum or the swirl of a dance, their heartbeat remains. The end of Kampa was not tragic. It was peaceful, like a river slowing before it merges with the sea. The towers still stand in parts, leaning slightly, whether by sun and rain, wrapped in green. The jungle closed its hands around them, not to hide them, but to embrace them. And for anyone wandering through those ruins, there's a gentle sense of being watched over, a civilization whispering, "We were here and we still are." Even the stories of warriors, sailors, dancers, and priests lived on. Children might hear them while playing by the river. Scholars might trace them through ancient scripts. And travelers might catch the rhythm of drums and the scent of incense in the warm night air, even if they don't know why. Kampa's fall reminds us that history is rarely about explosions and battles alone. Sometimes it's about continuity, about how life carries on even as maps change, about how songs, stories, and traditions travel quietly, settling into unexpected corners of the world. The Khams left a legacy far larger than any single tower or temple, a reminder that culture is fluid, patient, and resilient. So as you imagine the jungle closing its green hands around the towers, don't think of it as an ending. Think of it as transformation. The songs of dancers, the chants of priests, the glint of trade in the ports, all of it flows on in new forms. And somewhere in Vietnam, in the pattern of a drumbeat, the curve of a roofline, or the colors of a festival, Kampa still whispers its story. And perhaps that's the quiet beauty of lost empires. They don't vanish completely. They sleep beneath the trees, the sand, or the waves. They wait for someone to listen, to imagine, to remember. Tonight, as you drift further into sleep, picture those towers of red brick glowing softly under the moon. Imagine dancers spinning in the courtyard, leaves brushing their feet. Hear the faint hum of incense curling upward, carrying prayers into the night. And know that even in silence, Kampa's spirit moves on. Chapter 11, Beyond the Stone Walls. Great Zimbabwe. Now, let your mind drift far from oceans and jungles, across continents and time, to the heart of southern Africa. The wind carries a different story here, warm, dry, and full of whispers of granite and dust. We are stepping into Great Zimbabwe, a city of stone built by the Shona people between the 11th and 15th centuries. Close your eyes. Imagine smooth, gray granite walls rising from the earth without a single piece of mortar. No fancy cement, no magic glue. Just stone stacked with patience, knowledge, and the hand of people who knew how to make rock sing. The great enclosure, the largest structure, curves in a perfect ellipse, like the earth itself tried to hug the city. Its walls are tall, silent, yet speaking, telling stories without words. The name of the king who ruled here has been lost to history. No stone tablet etched with royal decree survives. No crown lies in a museum. And yet, the city itself is a monument. It hums with memory, whispering through the walls. We were here. We built this. We lived. Life in Great Zimbabwe was bustling and thoughtful at the same time. Farmers tended fields of millet and sorghum under a sun that could both warm and scorch. Cattle roamed nearby, their lowing blending with the wind. Merchants traded gold, ivory, and beads, some of which traveled as far as India and China. Imagine caravans of oxen laden with treasure, crossing rolling hills under a sky so wide it almost makes you dizzy just looking at it. The people of Great Zimbabwe weren't just builders, they were artists. Look at the carved soapstone birds, delicate yet bold, perched atop walls as if keeping watch. These birds aren't just decoration. They are symbols of kingship, of spirits, of stories told around fires at night. Some might look at them and think, pretty statues. But to the Shona, they were prayers in stone, songs frozen in time. Homes and neighborhoods spread around the great enclosures like ripples in a pond. People lived close to one another, sharing meals, water, and news. Children ran between walls, playing tag under the shadows of towers. Elders taught lessons by the fire, sometimes laughing, sometimes sighing at the weight of the world. Everyday life, the simple human ordinary things, is what truly makes a city. Trade was the lifeblood of Great Zimbabwe. Merchants brought in exotic beads, shells, and cloth. In return, gold, iron, and ivory left the city, carrying Shona ingenuity and culture across the seas. And yet, despite all this exchange, the city felt like it had its own heartbeat, slow and steady, a rhythm separate from the rest of the world. The architecture itself teaches patience. Walls built to curve and twist, towers rising gradually from the ground, stone by stone. No mortar, no rush, just careful planning and endless hands. It's a reminder that some things, empires, civilizations, and even dreams, take time to grow. By the 15th century, Great Zimbabwe began to quiet. Trade routes shifted. New kingdoms rose elsewhere. But the stones did not crumble. They remained silent sentinels over a land that had seen triumph, laughter, and love. No king's name survives, yet a stone stands still. And in that silence, the city speaks louder than any written record ever could. So if you wander there in your mind tonight, imagine walking along those walls. The sun warms the granite under your feet. A bird perches overhead, carved in stone or singing in life. Children's laughter drifts across the plain. The wind tells tales of kings who no longer walk the earth, but whose legacy rests in stone. Civilizations, you see, never truly disappear. They shift, transform, and continue in ways we sometimes miss. Great Zimbabwe reminds us that even when names are forgotten, human spirit endures, in walls, in art, in trade, and in memory. So tonight, as you drift deeper into sleep, picture this. A city of stone, grand and patient, standing strong in the African sun. Its walls hum softly, telling stories of people who built not for fame, but because life demanded creation. And remember, empires may vanish, but the heart of their people never truly fades. Chapter 12, Gold, Cattle, and Spirit. Life in Great Zimbabwe. Now that we've wandered the quiet stone walls of Great Zimbabwe, let's step inside its rhythm, inside the daily hum of life, where people moved, laughed, worked, and dreamed under the wide African sky. Picture the artisans first. They worked with gold, shaping it with careful hands. Tiny beads, bracelets, and ornaments formed in fire and patience. Sometimes you could hear the soft clink of hammer against metal, not loud, not urgent, just a steady heartbeat of creation. Every piece carried pride, skill, and a story whispered from one hand to another. Women ground grain in the courtyards, the rhythmic turn of their stones keeping time with the sun. Millet, sorghum, staples of life, falling into bowls that would feed children, elders, and travelers alike. Their work wasn't hurried. It was deliberate. Life here moved at the pace of the earth and sky. Wind over the fields, sun on the stone, and the soft shuffle of bare feet on packed earth. Herders guided cattle across the plains, their lowing blending with the hum of the village. Sometimes a child would run after a stray calf, laughter bouncing off walls, making the air feel lighter. Even the animals seemed part of rhythm, not tools, not property, but companions in daily life. Trade flowed quietly but constantly, from the Swahili coast to the Arabian world. Goods moved like gentle rivers. Gold traveled outward, exchanged for glass beads, colorful cloth, and spices that smelled of faraway seas. Traders arrived with stories as well as cargo, tales of distant ports, of ships riding waves under strange skies. People listened, eyes wide, imagining lands they might never see. And sometimes, if a trader had a flair for drama, they acted out the story, making children giggle, elders smile, and artisans pause mid-hammer strike. The village itself was alive in subtle ways. Smoke curled from cooking fires. Dogs barked lazily at the heat of the day. Women called to one another over fences, sharing recipes, gossip, and news from the fields. Children played tag through narrow alleys and open courtyards, their laughter weaving a gentle melody over the stone and earth. It was a music of life, ordinary, steady, unhurried. Food was simple but nourishing. Stews of grains, roasted meat, fruits from a surrounding bush. Meals were communal, eaten together under the sun or beneath thatched roofs. Evenings brought a pause, when the air cooled and the sky turned gold and pink. People gathered around fires to tell stories, sing songs, or just sit quietly, watching stars emerge over the plains. Every act, shaping gold, herding cattle, grinding grain, was part of a larger rhythm, a rhythm that connected the village to the land, the people to each other, and the present to generations past. You could almost imagine the invisible threads, hands passing skills, stories whispered across tables, traditions held gently in memory. Great Zimbabwe was not just stone and trade. It was human life in motion, a choreography of work, play, and devotion. The kingdom's wealth was impressive, yes, but the real treasure was this daily hum, the pulse of community moving together in harmony. Even the laughter of children felt like gold, richer than any metal mine from the earth. And those centuries have passed. You can still sense it. If you stand among the ruins, listen closely. You might hear the rhythm of footsteps on packed earth, the clink of tools, the soft murmur of voices. The wind itself seems to carry it. The music of work, the joy of play, the quiet dignity of life well lived. So tonight, as you drift further into sleep, imagine yourself walking through Great Zimbabwe's courtyards. Watch a child chase a stray calf. Hear the artisan hammer gold. Smell fresh grain being ground in the cool evening air. Feel the pulse of a community alive in harmony with the land. This is life in Great Zimbabwe. Simple, steady, human, beautiful. Chapter 13, The Mystery of Abandonment. Even the strongest kingdoms have moments when the air seems to shift, when the rhythm of life slows, and when the earth whispers, "It's time to change." Great Zimbabwe was no different. For centuries, its walls had hummed with the sound of hammer on gold, cattle lowing across the plains, and children laughing under the sun. But slowly, the hum grew quieter. The exact reason remains a mystery, And maybe that's part of its magic. Some say the droughts became too harsh, the rains too scarce, the soil tired from generations of farming. Others point to political struggles, kings and chiefs vying for control, shifting loyalties, the ever-delicate dance of leadership, and trade. Well, trade routes changed. The rivers of gold and ivory that once flowed like steady streams diverted elsewhere, leaving the city quieter, slower, emptier. Imagine this. The villagers waking one morning to a sky that seems too wide, a wind that feels insistent, and perhaps, just perhaps, the quiet feeling that it's time to pack up their lives and move. No clamor, no disaster, just a calm decision to leave. Stone walls echoing footsteps that would never return. Perhaps it was the wind that told them to move. The story whispers. And maybe it was when explorers centuries later stumbled upon Great Zimbabwe. They found a city frozen in quiet awe. Walls still stood, curving in graceful ellipses. Towers leaned gently, rooted in granite that had watched generations pass. But the streets were empty. Courtyards held no laughter, no sound of hammers, no voices calling across the plains. And yet, it was impossible not to feel the city's pulse. Every carved bird, every smooth stone, every shadow stretching across the ruins seemed to whisper, "We were here. We lived. We built. We loved." Explorers scratched their heads, amazed by what they found. How could a city of such size, such wealth, simply vanish? No written records explain the departure. No royal edict survived. Only the stones remained, patient and silent, keeping secrets that humans had long forgotten to ask about. And that's part of the charm, the mystery. Great Zimbabwe doesn't give answers. It invites wonder. It allows you to imagine the life, the laughter, the daily rhythm that once filled the space. To picture people deciding, perhaps gently, that the time had come to follow a new wind, a new path. Even now, standing among the ruins in your mind, you can feel that whisper of movement. The wind seems to shift just slightly, as if guiding your imagination along streets no one walks anymore. You can hear children's laughter faintly, as though carried across centuries, echoing from the walls. You can see the traders, the herders, the artisans, all moving, all alive, in the soft light of memory. And though the city was abandoned, its spirit never left. Every stone, every carved bird, every wall still hums with life. Time may have stolen its people, but it could not steal their mark on the world. Great Zimbabwe remains a teacher of patience, resilience, and quiet beauty, a place that asks us to slow down, imagine, and wonder. So as you drift deeper into sleep tonight, picture the city as it was, alive with gold, cattle, children, and song. Then see it empty, silent, waiting. Feel the gentle breeze moving across the plains, carrying stories from the past. And know that sometimes the greatest stories are the ones left unfinished. The mysteries that invite us to imagine, to dream, to fill in the quiet with our own thoughts. Great Zimbabwe's abandonment wasn't a crash, a disaster, or a tragedy. It was a soft turning of the page, a pause in a story that still speaks through stone, wind, and memory. Chapter 14, What It Means to Be Forgotten. Tonight, we walk through mountains, deserts, jungles, and stone plains. We've seen empires rise, thrive, and slowly vanish. But now, let's pause for a quiet thought. What does it truly mean to be forgotten? A civilization doesn't always vanish with fire or sword. Sometimes, it disappears in the silence of being unremembered. A culture dies not when its walls crumble, nor when its kings vanish. It dies when no one speaks its name at night, when no stories are passed along the fires, when laughter, song, and memory fade into the wind, leaving only the echo of what once was. Think of Lisha, perched high on cliffs above turquoise seas. The sun dipped gold over their rock-cut tombs. Their language once hummed through mountain valleys, carried on the sea breeze. Today, few remember the names of their cities, but the cliffs still stand. The tombs still gaze toward the horizon. Even in silence, Lisha whispers, reminding us of people who lived, loved, and dreamed. Now imagine Sogdia, its caravan routes stretching across endless sands. Merchants once traded silk, spices, and stories beneath starlit skies. Children chased traders through city gates. Oil lamps glowed warmly as tales of dragons, kings, and faraway lands were told. Today, the dunes have reclaimed the roads, and Samarkand sleeps under layers of history. Yet if you listen closely, you can still hear the hum of the Silk Road, the echo of voices carried by desert wind. Then there's Kampa, a kingdom of temples, dancers, and incense curling toward the sky. Golden festivals fill the night with drums and chants beneath a jungle canopy. Ships glided across the waves, carrying trade and culture far and wide. When the jungle closed its green hands around the towers, it didn't silence Kampa completely. In the rhythm of dance, the curve of carvings and the soft glow of a temple lamp, the kingdom still lives, a gentle, breathing memory of devotion and beauty. And finally, Great Zimbabwe, where smooth granite walls rise without mortar, where birds are carved in stone and the laughter of children once echoed through the courtyards. Kings and queens may be lost to time, trade may have shifted, and villagers may have moved on, but the stones remain. Their quiet presence tells us that life, culture, and artistry endure, even when human voices grow faint. All these lost empires share something. They are echoes of human longing, creativity, and beauty. Even when the names are forgotten, even when the streets lie empty, the cliffs, sands, temples, and stones carry the essence of life that once thrived there. They are reminders that we are all part of a larger story, a story that flows like rivers, shifts like deserts, and rises like mountains. To forget a civilization entirely is rare, because even in absence, it teaches us something about ourselves. The care we give to memory, the stories we share, the whispers we pass along, these are what keep culture alive. Perhaps, in some quiet way, remembering is a kind of immortality. So tonight, as you settle deeper into sleep, picture the world as it once was. The cliffs of Lisha, golden under the setting sun. The caravan sands of Sogdia, sparkling beneath the stars. The temples and dancers of Kampa, moving like living fire. The stone walls of Zimbabwe, steady and patient. All of it, living and breathing in memory, waiting for someone to listen, to imagine, to dream. Soft, slow fade of ambient sounds, wind, waves, and distant rustle of leaves. And remember this gentle truth. A culture may vanish from daily sight, but as long as its stories are whispered, its names are spoken, its songs are sung, it is never truly gone. A culture dies when no one speaks its name at night. But tonight, we remember Lisha, Sogdia, Kampa, and Zimbabwe, and in remembering they live again. Chapter 15, Sleep Among the Ruins. Now, dear listener, we've walked together through mountains, deserts, jungles, and stone plains. We've met empires that thrived and slowly faded. Lisha, Sogdia, Kampa, Great Zimbabwe. And now it's time for one final walk. A quiet stroll through ruins where history itself seemed to exhale and settle into sleep. Imagine standing at the edge of Lisha's cliffs, where the sea hums softly against rock. The sun has set, painting the sky in gentle purples and golds. The tombs carved into the cliffs gaze over the waves, silent, patient, like wise old guardians. A breeze carries the faint scent of salt and wildflowers, and you almost feel the soft footsteps of those long gone, moving along the paths you now walk. Drift across the desert sands of Sogdia. The caravan routes lie quiet under a blanket of stars. The hum of traders' voices, the jingling of camels' bells, even the glow of oil lamps, all now rest, tucked beneath the vast sky. But the stories remain, swirling gently in the night wind. If you listen closely, you can almost hear children laughing, chasing shadows among tents, learning songs that traveled as far as distant lands. It's a lullaby of trade, of life, of connection stretching across time. Step lightly into the jungles of Kampa, where temples rise like whispers from the earth. Lotus ponds shimmer faintly under moonlight. The soft rustle of leaves accompanies distant drums, long faded, yet somehow still present in memory. Dancers move in the mind's eye, arms curved gracefully, feet brushing stone in a rhythm that seems as old as the wind. Incense curls lazily toward unseen gods, and the entire night feels like a sigh of devotion, a gentle hum of life, and the slow pulse of human creativity. And now, walk along the stone walls of Great Zimbabwe. Granite towers rise without mortar, curving patiently like the earth itself is holding them up. The air is warm, carrying whispers of cattle lowing, children laughing, and artisans hammering gold long ago. Every carved bird perched on the walls seems to watch you kindly, as if saying, "Don't worry, we remember you too." The wind moves through these ancient places like a soft exhale, brushing your skin, carrying the scent of dust, grass, salt, and incense. Listen closely. You can hear the heartbeat of civilizations that once thrived. Quiet, steady, patient. Not a loud clamor, not a dramatic story of ruin, but a gentle, persistent rhythm that reminds us life moves on and memory endures. Tonight, you don't just walk these ruins. You become part of the quiet story. Your breathing matches a hum of wind through trees, the gentle lap of waves, the soft sigh of ancient stone. The cities sleep, the temples sleep, the walls, the carvings, the cliffs, the sands, all sleep. And as you drift further into sleep yourself, imagine lying down among them. Close your eyes and feel the stones beneath your hands, the soft rustle of leaves above, the hum of history in your ears. You are not intruding. You are joining a long line of dreamers who remember, who imagine, who honor what once was. History is not gone. It does not vanish entirely. Even when names fade or trade shifts or temples fall silent, history sleeps, waiting patiently, like a kitten curled in the sun, waiting for someone, perhaps you, to remember, to imagine, to dream. So tonight, let the ruins cradle you. Let the wind carry your thoughts gently across mountains, deserts, jungles, and stone plains. Feel the pulse of Lisha, Sogdia, Kampa, and Zimbabwe in your own heartbeat. And as sleep carries you away, know that these lost empires rest too, dreaming softly, quietly, eternally.